Josh Hennig hanging with you on 97.3 ESPN, another edition of Hanging with Hennig with fantasy football. It is NFL Week 2, and joining us for the conversation, as he does each and every week, is Andy McNamara. Of course, he is the host of the Sick Podcast at AndyMC81 on the X platform, at AndyMC Sports on Instagram. Andy, I finally have your social medias memorized. Are you proud of me?
I'm very proud of you. Thank you. It's also AndyMC Sports on TikTok. But I don't do any TikTok. Listen, I don't do the stupid trends or dance stuff. I usually post my angry post-game reactions after the Browns screw up and I get mad, and I post it on TikTok and Instagram. So,
anyway. Like this past week, you were just perplexed. It was more perplexed than mad.
I was furious at the kicker. And he's still employed. They didn't fire the kicker.
I know.
Only
the 49ers fired their kicker.
Yes. I would take that kicker who they fired, Jake Moody. No, we have Andre Schmidt. So the headlines and all the Cleveland stuff is Schmidt happens.
Right.
It's like, haha, it's funny until he costs you a game, which he did.
Well, that leads us to our first thing, because they talk about week 1 of the NFL. So for Andy, what was your fantasy football biggest takeaway from NFL week 1?
You know what? Honestly, I was pleasantly surprised and shocked with Justin Herbert, like how things kicked off. Like, right, it was that Friday night game against the Chiefs. I was feeling, and the vibe we were getting was it was going to be a run-heavy sort of, throw when you have to, Harbaugh, defense. Justin Herbert's running all over the place. He's chucking the ball. I was like, whoa. And I had him on the bench for one of my fantasy teams as a backup because I was thinking 15 fantasy points. No. Herbert's chucking it. He's feeding Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnston. Need to get more McConkey. I'm heavily invested, as you know, in Omarion Hampton, Josh. Heavily. And he got me under 9 fantasy points. That was the only downer. But Justin Herbert, for me, was one of the biggest positive takeaways from this week. And it's like, if you're Harbaugh and you get that type of offense going with what I assume will be as they ramp Hampton up, boy, man, that Chargers team just became a lot tougher and could be a real deal to challenge Kansas City, who's 0-1.
And I think that's what's interesting, because as the Eagles go and play the Chiefs this Sunday, of course, you hear the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. Merrill Reese, Mike Quick calling all the action. Coverage begins starts at 3 p.m. this Sunday. It's the idea that this is not just a rematch of last year's Super Bowl, Andy. This is hey, guys, the Chiefs might need this game more than the Eagles do, right? Which is why the news that came out on Thursday was Xavier Worthy suddenly back on the practice. Remember, the whole thing was he might have missed 2 to 3 weeks, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he's back on the practice field this week, and you're like, what the heck's going on? And now that's going to solve everything for Kansas City, but Xavier Worthy being on the field definitely makes that offense much more viable.
Well, it does if he's able to go full gear. Like, is he going to be a decoy? Like, that puts people in a perplexing situation for fantasy football, because one of the biggest ads this week was Hollywood Brown. It's all right. Worthy went down. He got 10 targets. Let's go. And then it's like, okay, if Worthy plays with this news, is he a decoy? If you're a Worthy owner, do you play him? That's a risky biscuit there, right? So what do you do with that? And that's going to be a question. To me, now you see how the rest, see game day, how it comes out. But I would be a little hesitant to put in Worthy for sure. Always, like we say, it always depends on what your other options are. If you got some scrub on all right, I might as well try Worthy. But you might want to try to figure out a little end around just in case.
When you think about what people have to do to win in fantasy, right? You and I always talk about here on 97.3 ESPN. Andy McNamara joining us again for a fantasy football conversation each and every Saturday on Hanging with Hennig. It's the idea that in fantasy football, there's a little luck, but there's a little, you got to pay attention. And I feel like even if Worthy is 100% go on Sunday, if you got another option, you might want to see the status of your other guys maybe on your bench, just because of the fact that there's no guarantee that a healthy Worthy is going to be out there. Because guess what? A.J. Brown got 1 target last week. And A.J. Brown came out in an interview this week, just a couple days ago, and he said, I'm fine. He's like, they were basically just double-teaming me the whole time. I don't expect the quarterback to throw to me when I'm double-teamed. So it's like, Well, what if Xavier Worthy gets shut down by Quinyon Mitchell? Then he's useless on the field for you in fantasy.
Absolutely. That's a situation. That's why what I always like to do is to, as much as possible, keep active on the waiver wire, right? Depends on how many teams are in your league and all that and the activity, but always have that little bit of a safety net. Probably not going to be the upside that you want, but at least do this. Even if you plan on playing Worthy, if he's in a wide receiver slot, pop him into your flex spot. Gives you another option in case you need to dip into the bench late, put in a tight end or a running back or what. It gives you some flexibility just in case. So at least slide him down for now and kind of wait and see. Because I'm a little skittish on him compared to, and it does kind of make you think, do I trust Hollywood Brown now? Right? I had some hesitation before, even with this news. And what does it mean for Travis Kelce, who got lucky with a touchdown as far as fantasy-wise to get him over the double-digit mark?
Well, that leads us to another receiver question here for our fantasy football conversation with Andy McNamara at AndyMC81 on the X platform at AndyMC Sports on Instagram. Of course, the show, The Sick Podcast. Like, subscribe, download wherever you get your podcast. Adam Thielen and others were major letdowns for fantasy owners, okay? Yeah. Xavier Legette, right? He's another guy who was a major letdown for people, right? How much do you read into week one, Andy? How much do you say, for example, Matthew Golden, the guy that you and I both like, he had an okay game, not a great first game. And you're like, well, do I even care what he does after week one? Do I put him on the bench? Do I keep him in the lineup? Like, what are you telling people about how much do you overreact versus underreact after week one?
It's something you definitely don't want to overreact, but you don't want to ignore either. You don't want to put your head in the sand. Be proactive. That Xavier Legette, I got him in 3 leagues. And I still think he's going to pop. But I was very bullish because of the departure of Thielen, because Coker was out injured. We still have to remember, though, Carolina Panthers, when you bank too much on a bad team and a tiny quarterback,
right,
you're going to have off times, right? But I still believe in Xavier Legette. For Adam Thielen, I'm less surprised because he might retire after this year, right? Like he's on the back 9. What do we really expect out of a 36-year-old Adam Thielen?
What we were expecting is, not to interrupt you, but what we were expecting is a guy who worked out with J.J. McCarthy all offseason. You brought him in here on purpose because Addison is suspended. And you thought, well, the guy already's got some chemistry with the quarterback. Maybe he'll give you 10 points.
Sure.
Like 10 points can make or break a team. And he gave you 4?
Very, very disappointing. Very disappointing. No, you're right. You're right. Bringing in with J.J. McCarthy. For when you look at the Packers and the Bears after week one, it was a case of kind of what I was saying all offseason, Josh, of a lot of mouths to feed, and nobody really took hold, right? It's kind of that unfortunate guessing game from the tight end through the receiver core. Like for the Bears, I knew Loveland and Kmet were going to cannibalize each other, and they did. It was all spread out. You look at those numbers. 3, 2 catches, 4, all. What are we doing? What happens is you're going to be getting 8, 9 fantasy points across the board instead of any one guy popping. That's a big problem, especially when people spent. I didn't get because I didn't want to spend that high draft capital in a DJ Moore or a Dunze. Luther Burden III, I was not a believer in. He didn't do squat either. Doesn't mean he won't, but he didn't. So it's that muddy part. So taking out of week one, you want to see, okay, what was our first look? Okay. And then you got to go to week 2. Do we see a trend? Is there something different? And that leads us into the week 3. So it's really now you're mapping out. Don't bench your stars. Don't panic like that. But if it's 2 weeks, then we got to start getting concerned. And that's why you always have to pay attention to the waiver wire, like getting a Keenan Allen for nothing. I didn't expect Keenan Allen to do that well. I got Keenan Allen on my bench. I'm not going to play him this week, but I want to have him just in case.
Right. Well, I'm glad I mentioned the waiver wire, Andy, because, I'm in one fantasy league where Jordan Love is on the free agent wire. And now I don't need him because my 2 quarterbacks are Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert. I'm okay. You know what I mean? Yeah,
you're good.
I'm set. My other league, it's Kyler Murray and Justin Herbert. I'm good. I'm set. I don't need, but that is a key to this because Jordan Love, solid, not great week 1. Justin Fields, amazing week 1. Kyler Murray, meh, week 1. Drake May, meh, week 1. What do you do with those second and third tier quarterbacks? Because guess what? J.J. McCarthy, bad first half, great second half. What are you telling owners of quarterbacks that maybe you don't have one of the top 5 or top 8 guys when you get into that next layer of QBs?
How about, too, we mentioned little Daniel Jones from the Colts.
Yeah.
Holy cow. And the Dolphins, good Lord. You talk about them. McDaniels is, he's toast. Come on.
Yeah.
The Dolphins had a players-only meeting Thursday. Yeah, we know what that begins. Now, here's the thing. Daniel Jones, very hot waiver wire ad this week. That was against the Dolphins.
Yep.
This week, you're going up against the Broncos. So couldn't you totally see people, I'm putting Daniel Jones in. And then, Broncos shut him down. I picked him up in 2 leagues on my bench. I want to keep quarterbacks or capital. Somebody goes down, that's where you can use it as currency and maybe make a trade later on in your fantasy league. So I got Daniel Jones. And listen, if Daniel Jones is running in a couple touchdowns against the Broncos, okay, hey, I'm not going to argue with you. I'll put him in my fantasy league. So for those type of players, for the quarterbacks, you got to wait and see. It's those tweener guys. And we can add in there Dak Prescott and CJ Stroud in our ESPN league. Those are my 2 guys. Both didn't do too well. I'd say my biggest disappointment from week 1, Houston Texans. Josh, totally flat. 9 points. Totally flat. I don't know what. Ridiculous. I'm hoping Baker Mayfield and the Bucs can light them up a bit for a bit of a shootout because that offense, which is supposed to be popping, nothing.
Well, also they were playing a very good defense, so let's not overlook that fact.
But 9 points? Unacceptable. Unacceptable. You can't give me a touchdown. 9 points. No, I don't. This team was slated to win the division and be an AFC contender to a degree. You got to be better than that against tough defenses. Inexcusable. I was super pissed off.
But speaking of quarterbacks, you did poorly. If you are a fantasy football owner of Jared Goff, Jahmyr Gibbs, Michael Pittman Jr., Sam Laporta, right? The big 4. What are you doing, Andy McNamara?
The Lions. Oh, my God. I'm glad you brought them up. Yeah. Just like, what's going on? David Montgomery, too, right? Everyone was eating last year. Nothing. So, now, was it you? Now, you might have been the one to tell me this. If not, I got it from somebody else. Were you the one to tell me that without Sean McVay or Ben Johnson, Jared Goff is 0-19?
He's not 0-19. It's something like 3-13 or
3-13. I thought there was something with a 19 in there.
3-19 or something. I know he has 3 wins, maybe like 18, 19 losses or whatever.
Right, maybe that was it.
Because remember, he played that 1 year with Jeff Fisher as his coach.
Whoa. That's 7-9. Beep. Yeah, that was the best. But that's a concern that there's too much talent. Again, this is a case for week 1. Too much talent to keep down. You got it. Put everybody back in week 2. We're putting everybody back. We're putting Amon St. Brown back in. We're putting Laporte in. We're putting Gibbs in. If you have Goff, putting Goff in. It's just a case where if we see it 2 weeks in a row, then you got to go. And that's why you have to start trying to maybe make a deal, not a panic deal or a waiver wire for some depth now. Because that Bears team, it's not the hardest test in the world. Lions are 6.5-point favorites from what I can see, but it's going to be a good enough test. And, hopefully they snap out of it. Remember, too, Josh, with the preseason, it seems like at the last 2-3 years, we don't see teams hit their stride till week 4, right?
Right.
So that's the other thing to keep in mind. You don't want to be dumping or trading off or selling off, and then week 4, you're like, uh-oh, now they woke up, and I got screwed.
Couple more for Andy McNamara. By the way, I think for some of these games, they might need a little access, Andy, because I'm going to call you from now on. Access Andy calling the plays because I'm telling you right now, some of these matchups in the NFL this week, I think we need a little excitement in our lives, Andy.
Yeah, well, Josh, I'm very glad you brought that up. This is a project I'm super proud of. I worked very hard on Axis Football 26, new football video game. Now, the franchise has been around for over a decade. And it is the most customizable football game out there. It's on PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, PC, and mobile. and I am the play-by-play voice for it. So when you turn on the game, Josh, you're going to have me yelling at you going, Hennig drops back in the pocket, throws it, and touchdown! And you can create your own team, stadiums, the customizability of it, the playbooks. Josh, you can create your own plays from scratch. Like you can make your own plays. You can add in playbooks and get so detailed as much as you want. It is a fantastic game. And I worked on it from January to August doing, Josh, over 12,000 lines. Over 12,000 lines and 530 player names working in on over. It was such a great experience. Danny had access and Nick, the product engineer, the producer engineer, sensational. And it is such a great game. I recommend everybody go get it. Axis Football, AXIS. You can get it. PlayStation Store, Xbox Store, Nintendo's coming out in a couple weeks. Like I said, PC on Steam. Get it. And you'll hear me calling the play-by-play. I put in a few little Easter eggs too, stuff that you wouldn't get in Madden and stuff like that, right? You get a little unique Andy flair, and I think you guys will like it.
I love that because, like I said before, you look at some of these games this weekend. I always, criticize Mike Gill when he makes fun of the NFL schedule here on 97.3 ESPN. But I will admit, some of these games, Patriots, Dolphins, 49ers with Mac Jones versus the New Orleans Saints. Was it Panthers, Cardinals? I think the Access Andy might be needed for some of this.
I think so. I think you're right. It's we just like some of the cool stuff, and to be able to hear it back as like a legacy project for it's really good. So I highly recommend viewers, listeners, like check it out. Access Football 26. You guys are going to absolutely love it. It's so fun. Such a cool little game.
All right, before I let you go, I got to ask you about our least favorite position in fantasy football for the last couple of years, tight end, because Brock Bowers and Dallas Goedert, both of them did not practice pretty much the entire week this week for both the Raiders and Eagles respectively. We know that the backups for both of those teams are not exactly the greatest players in the world, right? They're not the handcuff you might have for like your backup running back or your backup wide receiver. And we already know tight end is a thin position, Andy. So what are you telling people heading into week 2 of the NFL with the tight end position? Because guess what? If you drafted Brock Bowers, like I did, you're in trouble.
You're in trouble. Like, I think Michael Mayer, you can pop in. Remember, the year before Brock Bowers was drafted, Michael Mayer was really good, highly touted, had a successful rookie year. They drafted Bowers. Even last week, he got 4 catches. So I think Michael Mayer could be popped right up. Remember, opportunity equals success in fantasy football. They are still thin if your name isn't Ashton Giente and Jacoby Myers popped off. So Michael Mayer has a path. I'll tell you another guy, and I mentioned him on my Tuesday show. Every Tuesday show, we go under the wire, waiver wire pickups. Harold Fannin Jr. for my Browns. Josh, this guy, I in Dynasty, I was excited. You can be excited now. You can pop Harold Fannin Jr. in a flex spot or maybe even a tight end spot now because he was used all over the place. Josh, he lined up as a fullback, a running back, a tight end, a receiver, even took a snap in a wildcat. This guy's all over the place. He's got sure hands, and especially with the Baltimore Ravens, where they're going to be targeting Jerry Jeudy, David Njoku, who benefits? Those other targets. Harold Fannin Jr., man, this dude's electric. I would get him into your lineup if you're in tight end trouble. And borderline flex as a standalone. I'm very bullish on him, especially if the Ravens force the Browns and returning Joe Flacco to Baltimore into a bit of a shootout.
By the way, and I know a lot of people will hold us against him because he dropped the game-winning touchdown at the end of the game, but Juwan Johnson, the tight end for the Saints, he put up good numbers last week. And, remember, in fantasy football, it's not always just about scoring touchdowns. If you're in a PPR league, the guy who gets the targets like a Johnson does, he might be somebody you grab to fill in because guess what? Andy, when a young quarterback starts looking to a tight end, he's going to keep going to that tight end.
Exactly. That's it. And I'd rather take a chance on him than, let's say, Dalton Schultz, who's out there only 10% rostered. If the Texans don't bounce, but you got to show me a little bit, right? Hunter Henry's pretty pedestrian. Do you take a chance, Mike Gesicki versus Jacksonville? That could work.
Gesicki got basically got vultured almost half the game.
Yeah, he sure did. And that's the chance you take, right? That's why my top 2 fill-in tight end starts would be Michael Mayer for the Raiders and Harold Fannin Jr. for the Browns.
There it is. Andy McNamara, Andy MC81 on the X platform, at Andy MC Sports on Instagram. Of course, the Sick Podcast. Like, subscribe, wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, they do the show. What's the schedule? Sundays and Tuesdays, right?
Yes, we're live Sundays, 10 a.m. Eastern on YouTube, and that's where you pop in. We have our parlay party. We make ridiculous parlay bets, like 15 legs. We do our fantasy football start sits, and if you got your fantasy football questions, you hit me up on social, #AskAndy. We answer them live on the show.
Andy, my friend, we'll catch you again next week.
All right, buddy. Talk to you soon.